All right, at 48 minutes past the hour, we welcome you back to M Live NTV. Remember, you can interact with us on Twitter and all our social media channels, on Facebook as well, and at NTV Kenya, or you can tweet me directly at Karanza_Ibra. We will be sampling some of your comments later on, but we now get into the topic of the day, and this is about the role of Parliament in climate action. And I want to start with the chairperson of the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus. And at this, I will start with something that Kenyans have seen involving a member of Parliament. And one would think then, do members of Parliament understand where we are? And I'm speaking about comments by the Honorable Peter Salasia on what is going on at the Climate Summit. Have you seen it? Have you seen the comments?
Yes, I saw the comment for Honorable Salasia that he was saying he was not elected to talk about climate change. And sorry for that comment. Currently, what is affecting people globally, it's affecting all of us. It is affecting our constituencies which we lead. Therefore, as legislators, our roles is purely legislation, oversight, representation, and the budget making. Currently, what we have also made decision as members of Parliament and the Senate, because the Parliamentary Caucus on climate change is purely non-partisan. It has brought all members of Parliament from National Assembly and the Senate for the purpose of climate change. Therefore, in our representation, we are the people who give direction to our people. We are here to give awareness and education to our people where we do representation, so that our people can understand also matters of climate change.
Has that awareness been done to members of Parliament? Again, coming from the background of the comments coming from the likes of the Mheshimiwa Salasi, and we'll be coming to you, Mheshimiwa Pasaris, to also respond on that, because it really is concerning when we have such a caucus and members who sit in the same house with you are having such an opinion about climate action and climate change.
Issues of climate change, currently, it's not a hidden matter. This is a global matter. It has affected our country. I wonder where a certain member of Parliament can be in this corner of this country, and they pretend they has not seen the impact of climate change in our country. When we are talking about food production insecurity, when we are talking about floods in this country, when we are talking about when we are talking about even landslides, when we are talking about Kenyans losing livestock over 2.5 million, I would wonder which member of Parliament in this country is not aware of what is happening. Therefore, in the National Assembly, we are there as members of Parliament. We talk these matters which are affecting us. It's unfortunate that it's coming from a member of Parliament, Honorable Salasia, that is not aware of what is happening. Actually, it would be even, I would describe it as a very bad taste. Having even Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, which has brought the world in Africa, and we are talking about the climate change. And I would wonder also of our member of Parliament, when the government has initiated very good initiatives in this country in relation with matters of also climate change, like the 15 billion increment, that is an addition of that % of change and the capacity building in the members of Parliament also. It's a continuous, we are here to learn. This is a platform which brings all of us together so that we can talk about the challenges, the ideas, and the good practices. But on that point, allow me to finish. I don't want to comment so much on my colleague, but I hope he is going to be joining us.
Yes, you're right. And I don't want us to look at it from a point where we are calling out Mheshimiwa Salasia. Actually, what is of the common man in your area, in your constituency, say from Mukuru or from Mathare, about climate action, climate change, and how they understand it?
You know, we live in a world where everything is interconnected, but I can also relate to where he came from. You know, when you look at Mumia's, the area that he represents, they're farmers, right? And they're cane farmers, and their issues are more to do with the mismanagement of the institutions rather than the climate effects on their crop. On the other hand, you've got unemployment is a big issue for most of our youth. And when the youth are dealing with unemployment, they are not able to relate unemployment to climate change. So we have to remember that different places. Yeah, there's some areas where an MP, the youth, the citizens that voted for him are more concerned maybe with housing, or more concerned with medical facilities, or more concerned with educational facilities or bursaries or jobs. So depending on your interactions when you do civic participation, what the people are asking you, it's jobs, it's better medical facilities, it's food, it's it's education. These are the things, housing. These are the things that citizens want. But then you have to realize when we're talking about health, right? There is a correlation. Too cold, then we have health issues. All right. If you're talking about food, then there is a correlation. Looking at housing, it becomes more expensive to provide the kind of houses that you want. In Nairobi, most of the people are living in houses that are made out of sheets, metal sheets. When it's too hot, it's too hot. When it's too cold, it's too cold. When it floods, the metal sheets are washed away. So again, that's all the impact and effects of climate change. In the olden days, you used to have mud huts. All right? And people used to live in mud huts without a problem. Problem with media today is that you take one bus sentence and you can destroy an entire conversation with it. So I'm sure it was taken out of context, because he is a man connected with his constituents, and he is who he is, and his constituents love him and respect him. And I've seen events that he has, sporting events, where he fills an entire stadium. You'll think it was a presidential event. So let's say the media ran with one line, And yeah, he is what he is, and you have to accept every human being the way he is. He's elected. He's serving his people, and right now the buzzword in his people's lips is not climate, but eventually he will realize how they're all connected, and he will join the conversation, because what we're looking for is justice for Africa. The continent of Africa is suffering because of emissions that were not made by us. I was looking at the emissions, even the president mentioned it yesterday, that the West, the Middle East, they're producing so much in terms of per capita emissions. Kenya is 0.34. If you look at the DRC, it's 0.08. Why is it so low? If you look at America, it's in the 15. If you look at some of the Middle Eastern countries that are oil-producing countries, are in the 30s and 27 per capita tons per person. So this is a lot of emissions. So what we're saying is we should have there's a way to rate this. We should look at the global population, look at the countries that are emitting the most per individual, and the president talks about a carbon tax. If we had a carbon tax, and the tax was paid to a global fund, the countries that produce less, right, obviously are going to pay less taxes. The countries that produce more are going to pay more taxes. There are many formulas that you can do it. Once you have a formula, and you have agreed on a formula of taxing the ones who emit the most into the planet, then we will be able to mitigate and come up with programs to mitigate this climate change. We as well are developing. All right, so we are also going to be producing, but there are ways. We go solar, we go wind. Yesterday they launched the hydrogen. What was it? The hydro?
Yes, sir. Yes, green hydrogen.
Yeah, green hydrogen. Kenya has already signed up to it. So I feel that if we come up with the carbon tax, and we are able to then ensure that everybody pays the tax, including Africa, if we're producing the emissions according to our levels, then that money goes in to mitigate, right? And we can have this climate adaptation programs in every country. We need to plant more trees. We need to go to clean energy. We need to compensate for the disasters. I mean, we need irrigation in Africa. We need more food security. And I think there's a formula. It's been agreed. Now it's just a question of adopting it. The formula is there. It's on the table, right? And as Mitika says, we do not need loans. It cannot come in terms of loans. All right, and I always feel that, what if the global north decides they don't care? Do you know what? They're also getting impacted by climate change. I mean, look at California the other day. Look at Europe, the heat waves, the cold winters. One day they're going to have to get it. That, you've got to take responsible for the damage that you have. That's why we talk about loss and damage. So I feel that coming together and talking with one voice, when we go for COP29, it's hosted in the 28, sorry, when we go to COP28 or any other COP in the future, this time we have to have a solution that's workable. People have to put the money down, workable. You know, people have to put the money down. Africa has to start the programs that it needs to start so that together we can solve. The globe is one. The globe is one. And we need to save our globe. If we don't, we're destroying our earth.
We need to save our globe. And that is why I bring you, Mithika, and ask, looking at, let's go way back to 2009 and the pledges that were made in Copenhagen, a target of $100 billion US
per year.
Toward
That's responding. And of course, the social media picked the bad part of it. But I noticed one thing. He knows, of course, there is climate change. But in his understanding, you know, he has a way to put it. And as Mheshimiwa was saying, Salasia thinks that it's not a priority for him, for his people. And this is actually what we see everywhere. And that kind of lack of awareness and the connection with our day-to-day lives. And Mheshimiwa, I don't want to repeat it, is really connection. What does it mean to our food? What does it mean to our, you know, energy? What does it mean to the people dying out of malnutrition and so forth? And so I think we need more awareness. We need our policy. That's our policy maker who is supposed to really vote for what we want in Parliament. Just imagine that he doesn't understand. Our offer, and we will work with the caucus to really build capacity of such member. It can be a very good agent of change. And we have an agreement with the National Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, and I think he belongs to that association of young parliamentarians.
Yes, sure.
I think we need really to change them, and we really have a lot of work to do, as it has been said. If a member of parliament says that, what about such a person, their constituents? So coming now then to your question about the pledges.
Sure.
I was in Copenhagen, and when that commitment was made, before that, the North offered what we were calling Fast Start Finance, $10 billion US, quick one. And you know, our leaders, we were telling them as the civil society, we saw that trick. But we told them, you are being tricked. Why? Because if you go to the books of the OECD, the developed countries, their data shows that they have delivered the money. When you come to our country, Kenya, let me go to Parliament and ask, where is that money? Go to my village, go to those pastoralist communities which are dying out of the impacts of climate change. Where is that money? These are what we are calling imperatives of climate justice, and what they are putting into simply unfairness. We need fairness into this issue. We need to be honest with each other. So just let me finish. I'm very happy because now I think we as the civil society have been very hard on our leaders. Yesterday, and I hope that this will be followed, whatever they said. Because they are asking the same question. We want commitment. That's what we have been saying. We have not seen money. We want more money. I think the only differing statement here was from John Kerry. And that is understandable. He is defending themselves the way they have been doing. Shifting the goalpost. We want, you know, terminologies, you know, semantics. But the most important thing, we want two things. We want to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And number two, we want to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And number three, the question is how, when, and who. How much do we need? Who is going to do what? And when? And when? All this is defined by the convention and the Paris Agreement.
Let's get it clear, because you have alluded to the fact that pledges were made previously, and you have asked, even challenged the members of parliament on where that money is. Just to make our viewers understand, is it that those who pledged never gave out that money, or is it that the money came but it got lost somewhere?
No, the money never came. That's been a big challenge, not just for Kenya, but for climate change. But the thing is, right now we know that there's a mechanism to understand what each individual in every country actually emits in terms of emissions. And we also know that if we know that somebody in Kenya, for instance, I produce 0.34 tons per year, okay, in emissions, then there's somebody else who is producing 17,000 tons per year. So you know that there's somebody in Kenya, somebody in the US, and this is what their production is. The US is not able to lower the production of emissions, then there should be a tax. Once you have a uniform tax, everybody pays that tax. And that money can actually go back to the same financial institutions that we have as tax, and then it's divided to the countries that have the least emissions.
Sure.
They haven't been able to do that. They've never been able to commit. So the first thing is, I think we were talking about a financial tax, transactional tax. Here is President Ruto and the team's presidents yesterday talking about a carbon tax. I think if we go for a carbon tax and we agree on a carbon tax, every citizen that produces, of course, America will not want that because they're producing the most. But the fact is, we've got to look at our planet and decide, do we want to save our planet? Do we want to be humane and actually take responsibility for the loss and damages that we've caused? So I believe that if Africa needs to talk with one voice and stand united. We have a lot of debt with the West. If they don't want to give us the minimum amount of pricing, okay, or the justified amount of pricing for carbon tax, then what we do, we know what it costs, we know what they're producing, we know what we've borrowed. Then what we do is we cover our loan with our requirements from the West. Because at the end of the day, if the whole continent decides one day to get radical and say, you know what, enough is enough. We have suffered, our people have suffered, colonization ends.
Partners by the West in how to take the continent forward in the struggle for getting back to where we are supposed to be. Many years down the line, has this happened? Are development partners, and this is of course in line also with that function that we'll be having later on the role of Parliament. I saw a function that the Kenyan National Assembly is hosting later, and all of you will be attending, on the role of Parliament in climate action. So over the years, are we getting Parliament more and more involved, or are we still at the same page?
Okay, so thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate my fellow panelists because they have raised pertinent issues. But I want to refocus my communication to parliaments. Globally, the role of parliament is representation, appropriation, oversight. So when you're looking at climate change, it's not any different. And I have served in the Continental Parliament, I have served in the National Parliament, and I'm in the Regional Parliament. You realize that most of these meetings that are held globally come up with resolutions and declarations, but most times parliaments are not involved. And therefore, when it comes to domesticating most of these multilateral instruments that we agree to, or our leaders agree to, and to parliament, the parliament must take a decision in terms of allocating resources, in terms of that representative role that we are given the mandate by the people. So to me, parliament is very crucial. In my law school, there was always a saying that the only thing parliament can't do is to turn a man into a woman, a woman into a man. But the rest of the things, the whole politics is played in parliament. So, and therefore, when Honorable working closely with PACJA, an institution that has worked closely in empowering legislators in terms of climate justice. Kenya was the first country in Africa to come up with a climate act, a smart one. And then Uganda, we followed. I was then in the, took a key role in Parliament of Uganda, and my president assented to the climate act that we have. Then Ethiopia and Nigeria. So when you look at the rest of the countries, where is the role of parliament? Because our niche is in legislations. So when we are talking about all this mainstreaming climate change in our modus operandi, in education, in health, in all our lives, because even when I represent the people, and I know that climate change cuts across all in whatever I do every day. Because if we're talking about food systems, you cannot talk about food systems without touching the issue of climate change, because it directly, when there are floods, for example, all crops are destroyed. So what can an MP say that he doesn't know about climate change? When there's a drought or a flood in my constituency in Ngora, the first person that will be called will be a member of parliament to address an issue in regards to floods or raise it to the government. So you find that as a member of parliament, every day you're dealing with climate issues. Yesterday, President Ruto talked about raising now feeding in schools to over 1 million. So meaning that indirectly climate change is affecting also our education sector. So as a member of parliament, it's very imperative that the capacity of members of parliament is built to be able to relate climate change to their day-to-day legislations, so that as we walk the talk, we are able to implement on behalf of the people. Parliament has to pass legislations. Our down to Senegal, to Kenya, to Ghana, to all these countries, because most times you realize that there's so much of bureaucracy. Even when this money is committed to, they will look at and say, but for example, Kenya, there is no prioritization on climate. But then which prioritization? There's even no law. And when this money is committed to, not most countries can access it, because the bureaucracy is just too much. So it takes the role of parliament to make sure that they commit the executive, because the executive commits on behalf of the country, to domesticate these commitments to a local understanding, to a national understanding, and then we represent the different constituencies in Africa now to the local understanding, including coming up with ordinances so that most of these climate-related issues are addressed.
And from that presentation you made, I've even gotten the actual date. This was in the 11th of May 2016. We are speaking about 8 years down the line when you made this presentation on the report on climate change at the Pan-African Parliament. And the rallying call there was involve Parliament more in climate action. What has changed? What would you say is a success from that particular time in terms of the executives involving the legislature more, and also the development?
Parliamentarians in Africa, without the involvement. So we had all parliaments globally in Bonn, and we had a meeting with Simon Steele, the Secretary General of UNCCC. And my prayer actually, when I was presenting that communique to him, we were like, parliaments must not be seen to participate in the sidelines, side events. Let us go into the mainstream of this whole discussion. That organization is working hard, but as parliamentarians, we need to take a key role. One thing you must know is parliaments change. So we need to constantly build the capacity of members of parliament. Because you will build the capacity, you will work very well. Esther is a wonderful representative for Nairobi. Charity is a wonderful representative for her constituency. Kiambu? Njoro, yes. But you find that the best legislators that you have, sometimes people change them. And then you have to start with the likes of the Siasa, who have to pretend that they don't know about climate change. You start the journey
afresh.
Pardon?
It means then again you start the journey from ground zero.
So you start the journey afresh. So it is a constant work on parliaments to understand most of these climate change issues, so that they are continuously impacting. And it's not about only having the law, it's also appropriating money for the activities planned for. And it's also about awareness raising in constituencies. Because despite the fact that we blame the North, we must take action. Let me tell you, for example, every day I cook food, and most times in the rural areas, all the food is cooked by charcoal, charcoal burning. So that means every day there is a tree cut. But how much of trees do we plant on a daily basis? So even when we blame the global waste, we must be seen as people to take action in our localities, in our schools, in our communities, so that when we talk, like for example, as we speak today, 132 million hectares of African land, cropland, is degraded. But who degrades? It's through our activities like overgrazing, it's through our activities like deforestation, among others. So this needs a collective action. It shouldn't be waiting just for the money from the global emitters. But with the little money also we must be taking.
They say the Kenyan parliament or the Ugandan parliament, but parliaments across the continent need to come together and lead the renegotiation of our debts. Pasaris has talking about that we should actually not be speaking about debts. That's in terms of climate action. But what role can Parliament play in renegotiation of these debts? Because our heads of state are crying that, look, the debt regime is unfair. Then again, there are the people's representative. What role are you playing?
Thank you very much. Allow me just to comment just a second to say that it's true there's a big room when it comes to the matters of climate change capacity building. We need to take a role, and soon and very soon. We are also organizing as a caucus to invite all the senators and the National Assembly so that they can know what we are planning to do, so that everyone is inclusive. Okay, let me go back to the matters of roles of legislators when it comes to the matters of the financing, issues of financing. First, in Kenya, let me appreciate also we have made a lot of big steps when it comes to what we are doing as legislators. The first, the way my colleague is saying, that we are the first country in Africa to have a Climate Change Act 2016. Actually, even after May 2023, when we had a Pan-Africa meeting in South Africa, we also came back. We were so much empowered. Thank you, Pacta. You played a big role to bring us all the legislators in Africa. Therefore, after that also we came back. We have also done some amendments so that we could have included the matters of the carbon credit. But it's good also mentioned when it comes to the issues of finance and the though we might be having very good legislations in our Africa and in our respective countries, we need money, we need finance, and that's why we were saying, when we are talking about developing nations doing pledges of a good amount of money, but we are saying nothing. For us as legislators, actually what we have been expecting, it is money which is accessible, which is affordable, and which is available. Therefore, what we are also saying as legislators, in our respective percentage of the amount of money when it comes to the environment. Therefore, for all of us members of parliament, legislators, we have to play the role of looking for funds itself and also to push even the pledgers that can they now take an action to do what actually they have promised. Therefore, we have to push all the corners made in the nation globally. We have a responsibility as legislators.
We will come back and start with you because we would want to understand the renegotiation. Then we'll go to, when we come back from the break, we'll also go to Mheshimiwa Passaris and see whether we can swap debt for nature. That's a conversation we'll be having when we come back. How time flies when you're having very interesting conversations. It already is 21 minutes past 7 a.m. You're watching AM Live. Don't go too far. There's more on the other side of the break.
Are you ready for a challenge that will change your life? Introducing #Nation Scholarship Challenge. We all know that getting an education can be tough, but we also know that a scholarship can make a huge difference. That's why Nation Media Group and Goodwill are giving you the chance to win 80,000 Kenya shillings. All you need to do is to post a video telling us why you want this scholarship and how it will help you achieve your goals. Don't forget to use the #NationScholarship in your post. It's super easy, and by taking part, you'll be part of a global community of people who are all working together.
Can't hear the teacher, or when you talk to her, you notice she's not hearing. And initially I thought she was just being cheeky or naughty. I mean, she's a small girl.
Yeah. Child's immunity is not very well developed, so it is not surprising that they may get recurrent viral infections. However, if these infections are coming with now high fevers, if the child is also getting ear complications like ear pain or ear infections, it means that whatever is happening is also affecting the ears. So the adenoids, where they're situated, actually will affect both, because naturally human beings are supposed to breathe through the nose. But no, when the adenoid enlarges, it obstructs the passage for breathing. There's always a risk with self-medication. And that is because, first of all, we may not be treating the right thing. And the second thing is, some of the medicines can actually be harmful to the child.
Own your your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, you're watching Live NTV. My name is Ibrahim Karanza. We continue with our conversation on the role of Parliament in climate action. And just to look at some of your reaction on Twitter, and Sir Nixon Ndugire says, going green is not an easy thing, especially from the ground where the common man is. There is a total lack of empowerment. Through electronic vehicles, like the one President Ruto used, he even goes ahead to quote yellow. Are they really affordable? So, those are things that members of parliament need to ask. But Charity, perhaps very briefly, the renegotiation, and then we come to you, Mheshimiwa Pasaris, the renegotiation of debts that African leaders are yearning for is something that may require parliament to actually come in and help push. So how exactly?
Probably the National Assembly of Kenya, Senate, and our executive. Can we sit and know where we can assist you as members of parliament so that each one of us can play a different role? That's why I actually was saying that all of us need to be involved. We need everyone to be included. The matters of climate change cannot be solved by the executive itself or the legislators themselves. Therefore, this is a combination of effort so that we can know what are we looking for. And when we are looking for whatever financing, that is, it still gives us our responsibility as legislators, oversighting that what kind of the programs the government initiating or implementing in the country. Currently, as legislators, all of us, we are supporting the idea of His Excellency, the President, William Samoei Ruto, the matters of greening in the country. Though the person who has talked there, he was saying that he was saying that it's hard to meet the matters of greening. I, to some extent, wished also to humbly request our Kenyans to remind them, this is our country. We are not waiting for anyone to come and make our country more better. We are the people to take an action. And for us, we are actually supporting the 15 billion idea of the president. Do you know why? The first thing about the 15 billion grid in the country is we are making our country more better. We are also going to affect the production of food because we are also going to influence positively the patterns of the rainfall in this country. We are creating jobs. This is our country. Can we take it back to its original times? And actually on that point also, remember when we are about even taking different actions and the matters of financing, what are these financing doing in the, whichever finance we are getting, what is it doing? Therefore, as for us, it's as legislators, it's to look for the kind of amount of money we can push for whichever respective ministries and support it. And when it comes to the global financing, let us sit as nations, let us brainstorm. What are we looking for? Where can we assist one another? Therefore, I generally made Change Act 2016 so that we could have done inclusion of the carbon credits. Therefore, it's a matter of every one of us to be included and play this role.
Pasaris, we have nature, and the conversation that we are also having, swapping nature for debts in this particular conversation. Is it time? Is it something that perhaps will help African countries and the global south largely in dealing with, coming to the same page with the global north?
I think Africa is being very diplomatic and humbling when it comes to talking to the global north. This conference that we've had, the summit that we've had in Kenya, which drew a number of presidents from the entire continent, including from South America. The whole idea is we need to address how to deal with emissions, how to save our planet, how to make sure that there is just compensation for the continent of Africa, which is not responsible for the emissions. All right, it's 20 countries in the world that are responsible for 96% of the emissions.
Sure.
Africa is 4%, of which majority of it is from one country. All right, South Africa. The rest of it, in terms of the emissions onto the planet. So what we need to do is we're saying, let's have a carbon tax. Let every country that is emitting be taxed according to the amount it's contributing. We're planting trees. Why are we planting trees? Because we want to make sure that we increase our carbon sinks. All right.
Sure.
We want to go electric cars, electric motorbikes. We've gone solar. We've gone wind. Kenya's already doing so much. All right. So the question is, we want to do a lot more. We're not saying that, oh, you're producing all the emissions, you should compensate. When they want to find money to do certain works, they find the money. All right. But when it comes to compensating the countries in the global south that have suffered because of emissions, they have no money. They have excuses. All right. They found the money when it came to COVID. They will find the money if they actually care. So for me, it's like they don't care. All right. Africa has struggled and post-colonialism, right, with grants, with loans, you know, but it's never enough. You know, if you're trying to save a child, right, that is completely malnourished, you can't do it with a spoon. You got to have a plate. Sure. All right, with highly nutritious food, with all the medical attention that you need to give that child to survive. So if we've got this malnourished child called Africa right now, and you're coming with a spoon today, a spoon tomorrow, we don't know the content, you're deciding, you know, you're not giving us the cushion required, you're not going to save the continent. So there's no goodwill. But it's not about the continent, it's about the whole world. All right. So it's about them too. It's about them and us. We're all one thing. So for me, I think if they are not able after COP28 to really, I mean, we've had pledges. We've had pledges, okay, from America, which America's been the biggest, you know, the toughest cookie when it comes to this. France as well. We had Macron commend President Ruto for the initiative that he's had. You know, there seems to be this fear of a united Africa. All right, but a united Africa is good for the whole world. All right, we've got a youthful population. We've got said that 30% of the minerals that we need to actually be able to reduce emissions by coming up with clean energy. Also in terms of electric cars, will come from Africa. But the thing is, it comes from Africa with divide and rule, with conflict, with underhand dealings. You know, so what we need is to make sure that Africa is respected, its minerals is respected, its people are respected. Picture, look at the debt of Africa and say, you know what? This is how we're going to take it. We're going to pay you half the debt and take half the debt to mitigate the changes that we need to do. It's going to be a tough stance. You deal with colonialism tough. You don't deal with colonialism in any form or manner by just always talking and talking and talking. So if they don't want an uprising in Africa in terms of the unfair debt, which has already been too expensive, then they better come up with a way for us to deal. Because even our debt, when we're talking about debt, we're not even looking at it in terms of climate. We're talking about the cost of money to Africa. Sure. The President Ruto said, look at our carbon sinks. It's an asset. Put it on our balance sheet and give us money as equals. Africa is struggling to pay debt, not because they have no goodwill to pay, not because they have no resources to pay, because it is 10 times or 20 times more expensive than the West paying it. They call us bad debtors, all right? But we are bad debtors because of the interest rates that they're charging us. So it's a whole global picture of us looking at each other with a humane lens. We don't want charity all the time. We don't want grants. We've got enough to stand solid as a continent.
They said that we are also bad debtors because of actions done by the global north. I mean, we are bad debtors because we
have to feed our people.
We feed our people. For instance,
deal with conflict.
Mithika, Pasaris is suggesting a more combative way. And looking at what...
Only if
there is an
they continue, there is an if. If they've heard the voice of Africa, let me tell you what, the fact that you had the UN Secretary General sitting, he sat through most of the UN Secretary General sitting, he sat through most of those conversations. He was there. All right. We had Africa Development Bank also there, represented by Akiumi. We had so many. We had the World Bank. We had the IMF. You know, we had investors. We had funders. You know, Bezos from Amazon was also there. You know, the representatives from his office. We've had all these people here, and this is not the first conversation we've had. We've had conversations where people that are investing in Africa are here. But the question is, are they going to put the formula in place, do the legislations that you need to do, and start paying up? If they don't do that, we cannot survive as a continent for another year waiting. We cannot.
Mithika.
Yes. Yes. First, let me just go back one thing about the role of members of parliament and how important they are in this discourse, and how, you know, we have lost it by not involving them substantially. We learned from Kenya. Kenya is a trailblazer. And you remember this Climate Change Act 2016. That is not a product of the executive. It was came out of a partnership between members of parliament and the civil society. Voluntary, the bill came first as a private member's bill, if I can remember, because I've been in this journey with Franklin Bett when he was an MP. He became a minister, handed over to Rachel Chevesh. Rachel Chevesh handed over to now Otichilo picked it up, and the current governor of Vihiga. We got a lot of resistance from the executive. Always executive is retrogressive. And now, I think this is one of the most progressive laws. One of the resolutions in the summit in South Africa, which was presided over by His Excellency the President Ruto in May, was actually a resolution to replicate that law. That's one of the best things to come out of Africa, and most of, even at global level, we are learning from that, and that's why Kenya has been very attractive. But unfortunately, and actually that's where sometimes, you know, is going to differ. The representative, the carbon markets, I think what they added was really to because there is a lot of things happening in carbon markets. Is not regulation, no checks and balances. I think we'll have a conversation, more conversation on carbon markets, because we believe it's not the answer to climate action. We know where the answer is massive resources from the north. Is not transferring the burden of action to us, the people who have not caused that problem, and the lady Pasaris is really putting it. This is actually what we are, is shared, the fair share. Fair share. You have caused the problem. We have the global carbon budget. The North has exhausted their budget. What is left, the 25% in the world, they want also to take that and tell me, now I want to pay you so that you can absorb what I have through these offset schemes like carbon markets. The issue here is, and I've always said, even if we turn Africa green, the whole of Africa green, by planting trees to absorb that carbon, as long as the US, Europe, China, and those other emerging economies continue their mode of production and consumption, because that's the problem on fossil fuels action to this poor woman and man. So the point then here is, with us working together, we know it must be a global collaboration. Africa is doing a lot. When the chair of the Council of Governors was presenting about what the councils combined are doing in Kenya, all the counties from our taxpayers' money, and that is for Africa. That's $1 million US. Can you divide that, convert that into Kenya shillings? It is not even a budget of one ministry. That is what it means. This shifting of goalposts and this posture is not right. We need action from the North. And what now we, as civil society, we want from the president, I think he has marshaled the national continental consciousness. And we need the right message, as we are seeing here, even from the declaration. Then we are going to the UN General Assembly. We are going to COP28. If we go that way, my friend, these people never listen to anything. The language they listen is language of pressure. If we threaten tomorrow that we are going, if you don't listen to us, we are going to walk out of that COP, I can tell you we'll come back with money. And that's where I see our friends. From here, We are going to work with parliamentarians. If they don't, the president doesn't look to, into us, listen to us. Already we have mentioned Honorable Gadambi, the president's friend. We'll go at Gadambi, tell him we are not enemies. We want to see him being our leader in Africa, and we are very happy. We want to work until we bring money to Africa, what they are talking about. But if you handle these guys with just kid gloves, oh, my friend, they will never listen. They come and laugh you, have lunch with you, have photos, and that will be the end of the story.
Jackie, the ultimatum that we now give them ultimatums. If you don't give them ultimatums, if you don't do what, as we say, we walk away of COP28, as Medeka is saying. Is it something you'd be willing to, you know, lead African parliamentarians in? Is it something you'd be willing to lead African delegates in at COP later in the UAE, in terms of leaving the ultimatum that it is time you did this? In case you don't, we are not part of this conversation anymore.
So, like the saying is that, what do we want? Climate justice. And legislators from other continents, we want to submit our petitions and make noise there as legislators. We want to participate in the thematic areas with party accreditation tags, so that we are able to work closely with the AG and the Africa group of negotiators, the civil society, to make sure that we influence the outcomes of the COP28. Because we are talking about COP28 being an accountability COP, the Global North must account for the previous pledges, $100 billion US up to now. The way of checking whether this money has come is not there. You cannot verify whether money has come to Uganda, whether it has gone to Ghana, whether it has come to Kenya. It's actually not there. It comes as loans and tagged to particular projects, which projects are dictated again by them. So this time around, we are saying, if we are a globe moving together for a climate action, let inclusivity be there. All voices must count, but most pertinent is the voices of the people that are represented. That is the voices of the parliamentarians, because they represent everyone. When she goes here in COP, we are going organized, and we will come back organized.
This organization, before I go back to Mheshimiwa Charity, this organization, can it or will it consider now back home, because we've spoken enough about what the West did and what the West needs to do to help in climate action. But let's talk about something like immobility. The pictures we are seeing from the President of Kenya at KICC, moving with that electronic vehicle, and its affordability. Is it time we gave incentives to e-mobility?
But billion trees for Kenya. But to me, I think that someone is taking some action. So as we come back from, even not coming back, we have to be walking the talk. Right now, people think that everything must be dictated to them by outsiders, maybe by, when I'm in Africa, I now say the other ones are foreigners. That is the thinking. But the thinking is that, the actual thing is that we have to do what we can amidst us. For example, e-mobility may not necessarily be only for Kenya, even Uganda. We now have to adapt to some technologies that can help us cope with the global world. We should not be seen to be, at least we travel, at least we see what is happening, at least if it's about renewable energy, let us unpack renewable energy and see, for example, a country like Uganda, what is lacking, where is the gap, how can we do it better? When you go to Estuela, one of the places in Germany, you find wind energy. I know a very good place in Uganda, Kabale, for example. Wind energy would do extremely better than it would do in Germany. We would do it in Uganda, we would do it in Kenya, we would do it in Tanzania. So really, let us think outside the box as we get towards implementation, so that we are all accountable for our actions. Because what we do today will actually have an impact on our children. in the nearby future.
Ibrahim, I want to, I think, take that forward. The issue of e-mobility, electric vehicles, what we are calling the just transition. It's a big debate. And where are we in Africa? You are talking about electric vehicle, which the president was driving. Where is it made? Is it made in Africa?
No, it's not.
It's not made in Africa. Where are the solar panels, depending on where Africa positions itself? We have vast resources, assets. Wind power in Kenya is massive. The solar, geothermal, and hydro in DRC, which can power the whole of Southern Africa. Yet we are 600 million people are living in darkness, have no electricity. So what do we need? Then how do we take advantage? DRC, the minerals, which are called critical minerals, minerals which drive the just transition, where are they? The vast majority of them are in Africa. Look at in DRC, 30% of the lithium which is used to drive for these electric vehicles is in DRC. The cobalt in Zambia, the manganese, cobalt, graphite, chromium, silicon, rare
in
earth,
Africa.
all this. Can we, so how do we add value on this so that we don't just export the raw materials and then we use these minerals for our majority of our youth are unemployed. Yet again, we are repeating the mistake of the Industrial Revolution when our minerals turns into sources of conflict. Because where there are minerals in Africa, we have conflict. Now that we have this conversation and have advantage over the globe, Africa has an advantage. Africa has what it takes. It is wealthy to drive the just transition, but we are losing that opportunity. I believe when we go to the COP28, this is the conversation we need, so that DRC says we are not going to allow friends to come to exploit us again. The Namibia says our copper, we want to process it.
The head charity. The issue of incentivizing immobility, then we come to Pasaris. We have about 3 minutes. What the president was driving is something that many would be told embrace. But then again, it's not affordable. According to that comment by Nixon Ndugire, it's not affordable. It's not, going green, like Ndugire is saying, is not easy, especially from the ground where the common man is. So what then do you do, not only as a member of parliament, but also as the chair of the Kenya the Climate Change Caucus in parliament, to ensure that we are able to move this direction, to move the direction of reducing emissions?
Thank you very much. First, allow me to say, Karaja, change is as good as rest. And we cannot do everything at the same time. But we should take an action. I think where it has reached for the Africa continent, it is no longer sitting and crying and having a lot of wishes and a lot of regrets. We must start from somewhere. Sometimes when we go to these developed nations, even as members of parliament, we feel attracted to very many good practices, very many good things we have seen. Therefore, when we are talking about e-mobility, actually, let us try to embrace whatever good technology which we are seeing. We can no longer continue talking about the developed nations having fantastic e-mobility, and when something is even initiated in our country, we start crying. Therefore, as for me, I would like to still say that it is the point Mheshimiwa Pasaris raised and said, when actually people are not aware, people have not gotten civic education, we have to continue complaining of everything. But I think it is giving us a platform so that we can also get a challenge as a continent, the way Mithika has said, that can we also think of what we have in Africa? We are very rich. What are we doing with our minerals? Are we continuing empowered? It's going to do a lot of employment to our youths who are the biggest majority unemployed in this country. Therefore, generally, Karaja on that point is to say that all of us, let's do serious civic education. Let us embrace technology, and let's do the best we can, because now this is the high time we just took an action. And we cannot complain anytime we take an action. We are saying it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But
Pasaris,
let's the time to take an action.
Are you willing to embrace e-mobility?
Okay.
Would you, did you drive using?
And though Pasaris is in the city, in Jor, I think it'll take some time, but we shall be ready to embrace it when it comes to.
Did you drive electronic cars?
You know, electric cars, smart cars, you see them in Europe, and I think a few people have brought them into Kenya. But let me tell you what, I had a discussion recently with the border, and they wanted to help them get some borders. And the thing is, there's electric borders, and there's, of course, the petrol ones. Now, until we have enough charging points across the county, because you see, can you imagine, you got an electric border, and then this guy was telling me, so mama, niko na hii electric border. Sasa, wajua nikimaliza petroli inaingia tu ndani. Sasa hii battery kikata, I said, you have a spare one. Lakini sasa, hiyo yote mbili nitapeleka wapi? So they want to know where are the charging points. And I'll give you an example. We have these coco-jicos that are ethanol based. And they've put centers where you can get the ethanol at any point. And they've sold over 1 million of them in Kenya. We're doing a project where we're going to be giving out 2,200 to Nairobi residents, hopefully trying to see how we can stop slum fires. Okay, so the thing is, change is never easy. But why are we trying to bring electric cars? Why are we trying to bring electric motorbikes when we are a country that is on the low list of carbon emissions? It's because we're being irresponsible. We're trying to make sure that we reduce emissions. That's why carpooling, you know, if bosses would allow their employees who want to carpool to reach the office at 9 as opposed to climate change, right? So we need climate action, and climate action requires money. So change will be difficult, but at the end of the day, we all need to take a shower instead of a bath. You know, a bath with shower with cold water instead of hot water, or use solar panels instead of electric, because every little thing helps and counts. You know, use glass as opposed to plastic. You know, the country has been on the right path when it comes to trying to play our role and our part, you know, to save the planet. So all these electric stuff will actually be okay, but then of course we've got to reduce our cost of electricity as well, because if the cost of electricity is very high, then of course the electric car will not be cheap. And there'll come a time when also fuel will go down. So it's all connected. At the end of the day, everyone wants value for their money, but then we want you to have value for your money, but also to think, how do we save the planet?
Thank you very much. How to Save the Planet is the best place to bring this show to a close this morning. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for honoring our invitation and engaging in a very, very important conversation that our country and continent really needed to have. And this conversation continues out beyond this particular show. You can continue the conversation on social media at NTV Kenya. At the hashtag is IamLive. You can also tweet me directly, like I said, at Karanja_Ibra. These members of parliament plus Mithika will be proceeding for an event at Parliament later today. That is where they'll be discussing the role of Parliament in climate change. That is the parliamentarians dialogue that is happening, of course,